And did somebody get the people know where to look for the link? No? And these don't care.
Monica, and I think we have been involved in story and
My name is Lorne Conway. I am from Lurgan.
My name is Jamie, and I'm from Lurgan.
Hello, my name is Matthew, and I am from St. Joseph and St. James Primary School.
my name is Ross, and I'm from Portsmouth Primary School. I want to say that two communities coming together and just making Northern Ireland a better place.
Sometimes I would talk to my friends about being like religions and stuff, but I really don't bring it up because it's just no, you don't really want to talk about it.
All I was used to was just living in a Protestant area. That's all I really knew about, so I didn't realise how sort of different the Catholic religion was. We get like some people throwing things over the playground because my friend was facing it, so like if I was in her house, she'd see like there was all paint over her and stones and stuff. So
my hope for Northern Ireland is that we move on.
Also recognise that the institutions in which we were brought up in haven't changed.
But some parents have opted out, and that is difficult, even because those children are not being engaged in those activities and they're coming back into class and then they've missed out on that opportunity.
Good morning. It's great to get a response. Surprised to get a response. It's my privilege as Chair of the Youth Council for Northern Ireland to welcome everyone, all parts of our diverse youth service. We've representatives from the statutory sector, policy makers, managers and practitioners, representatives from local voluntary groups and reps from the regional voluntary youth organisations. Thank you for taking the time for this crucial subject, and more importantly, we look forward to you engaging in the discussions and dialogue today. I'd like to thank Girl Guiding Ulster for welcoming us here and hosting us. I need to make a couple of safety announcements. They don't expect a fire alarm. If there is one, we leave the building and head to the car park. Green sign B if you're in the Brownie House. If we're here or in the main house, we head to the flagpole outside. There are toilets in the conference centre out here and also behind the stairs in the main house. Our purpose today is to provide information, encourage conversation and promote reflection on shared education. The programme will begin shortly with inputs from the Department of Education on policy, ARC on existing research in this area, and comments from Martin McMullan as a long-time practitioner. And they all provide us with key information regarding shared education. The programme will continue with a structured coffee break, what we have called the Marketplace Cafe, when as participants you can have conversations with others about their experience in this area. So after our marketplace in the main building, we will come back to this room and have a panel discussion with the speakers, and that will be facilitated by Hugh Campbell, one of my colleagues on the Youth Council. In the afternoon, Joanne from ETI will share their work on self-assessment in this area of youth work. This will be followed with workshops when the conversation can continue. 10 years ago, as part of the review of public administration, when the government decided youth work policy and support should remain under the control of the Department of Education, it was clear that youth work needed to align its goals with wider education policy and strategy. Throughout Priorities for Youth, it has emphasised that youth work is part of the education service, and as such it will be respected and acknowledged. But it also needs to contribute, and does contribute, to general educational outcomes. Today we join with the wider education, in embracing the new Shared Education Act and its potential for change in education services for young people. We're not here to discuss new money or new programmes. As part of today, we want to celebrate, actually, youth work's contribution to community relations, community cohesion, making community connections. Whatever language you use to describe the concept, it is underpinned by the values that you all hold today. We want to celebrate existing practice rooted in the principles of equity, diversity and interdependence, the core principles of the youth work that you practice. Our intention is to assist you as educators to engage in shared education, to provide frameworks for you to implement the policy, and to investigate ways we can support you to bring new opportunities for young people. So I'm looking forward to making the most of this opportunity for the benefit of young people. Right, so to our first session. We're delighted to welcome a group of speakers to introduce our subject. Firstly, Andrew Bell from the department will outline the policy, and many of you will be familiar with Andrew's work on CRED and his ongoing support for youth work. And we look forward to hearing from him how youth work fits with the overall policy implementation. Andrew will be followed by Dr. Paula Devine from Queen's, and more specifically ARC. And again, many of you will be familiar with the Youth Life and Time studies and research into young people's attitudes. We look forward to Paula's input and hearing how perceptions and attitudes amongst young people have changed over the years. Finally, we have Martin McMullan, or officially Dr. Martin McMullan, who PhD. So well done, Martin. So you put in Dr. Martin McMullan in all your correspondence.
Her DMs.
As you know, Martin as a practitioner will reflect on shared education and in his particular his own PhD research into this area. And he will look at the issues we need to address as we embark on this journey. As you may know, Martin is very experienced in both delivering and managing equity and diversity in his role in youth action. Throughout the day, we'll be sharing some thoughts directly from young people. So before we begin, let's hear from young people from a variety of ages, backgrounds and experiences.
We had Girls Brigade, Boys Brigade, Scout in Ireland, the Scout Association, the Ulster Girl Guides and the Catholic Girl Guides of Ireland. And to bring all these young people, 72 young people together under the one common goal of trying to teach them about that we're a shared society and that we all need to get along. I think it's just wonderful.
I mean, the 3 weekends were based on different things. That means the first one was just getting to know each other. The second one was like communities and like how different communities are. And then the one we're on now is one's about symbols. That means how it represents people. I didn't really find anything challenging apart from the activities like jumping off things. It was just fun, but it was like when some points are you're just like, am I going to give up? But then you just remembered, you know, you don't want to because you've got your friends around you and they're supporting you. Yeah, I think it is because like everybody's the same. Well, they might not have the same background, but really they are the same. No, I wouldn't say that. No, a lot of people just rather stick with their religion and like go ahead with it like that, but I just want to change it a wee bit. There's like, might be people who want to have the change and then there's people who don't want it at all. And I think they're going to be the ones that are trying to stop this.
Good morning. I sort of feel after the first DVD I should say, I'm Andrew and I'm from the Department of Education. But I skipped a bit. My role this morning is really, and don't be too much put off because they've given me a very small amount of time, but glad to know to talk about policy and it's just to get a bit of context to the day. So, shared education. Advancing shared education is an executive commitment. It's referenced in both the programmes for government, the recent programmes for government, and also the Together Building United Community strategy. It's not just another programme or another initiative. As former ministers have said on several occasions, the objective is to move to a position where shared education is just the way we do things here. Together with other education settings, the youth service has a key role to play in the delivery of shared education and making it a reality for young people. And that's reflected in the ministerial foreword to Priorities for Youth. I'm going to quote from it. It says, "Youth work can support shared education by providing valuable opportunities for young people to build upon their school-based learning, to develop new skills, to develop new relationships, and to develop themselves." So that's where youth work can actually contribute towards this. And today's event hopefully will provide an opportunity to explore how this can be achieved. So what is shared education? The slide here is the definition that's given in the legislation. So it's a way of delivering education where two or more educational settings, that could be preschools, it could be schools, it could be youth, or it could be any combination of those, where they collaborate on a cross-community basis to deliver educational benefits, and that includes those personal and social skills which youth work is so effective in terms of delivering. Also promoting the efficient and effective use of resources, promoting the equality of opportunity and good relations, and promoting respect for identity, diversity and community cohesion. All of those align with and complement similar things in Priorities for Youth and the youth work model for effective practice. The aim of shared education is to improve educational as well as those community relations and reconciliation outcomes for young people. The Act itself, Shared Education Act, is the legislation, came into force in 2016. It includes a definition of shared education. It defines shared education, as you'll see from the slide. It has to include the education together of those with different religious beliefs and those from different socio-economic backgrounds. In practical terms, that actually requires children and young people to learn together on a cross-community basis, and also that mix of socio-economic. But that's an easier thing because most organisations are able to deliver that. But that has to be in a regular and a sustained way. And it's about young people learning about each other from each other. You'll see also it must involve two or more providers of education. So it excludes naturally mixed settings like an integrated school or a naturally mixed use setting. They can only participate if they are in partnership with another setting to deliver shared education. And these are the minimum core requirements. You have to be able to deliver those to be delivering shared education. For those who are interested, I'm not going to say any more about the legislation, but if you are interested, probably most aren't, we do have copies at our table in the marketplace, so you can pick one up there. The Sharing Works policy. Sharing Works was published in September, involved in, and a series of pilot projects which the department delivered on behalf of the International Fund for Ireland. So all the key lessons out of those have been drawn together. The introduction to the policy explains the educational, societal and economic case for shared education, and the policy itself explains curriculum, and in that way it complements those reconciliation aspects of shared education. You have a copy in your pack of the shared education policy, so you'll be able to reference that if you need to. Just one more slide, we're glad to know, in terms of the policy. Policy, while the legislative definition, I've showed you the legislative definition, which are those two, religious and socio-economic mix, while that sets out those minimum core requirements, the policy actually encourages settings to go beyond those two and into that wider Section 75 groups, so disability, sexual orientation, carers, all of those different Section 75 groups. So the policy does encourage that additional work. And it sets out 14 commitments to advance shared education, and that includes skilling the workforce for shared education delivery, and the Education Authority are leading on the provision of professional learning in this area. It also includes providing support to practitioners again through the Education Authority, and having a self-assessment framework which can be used to assess the level of sharing which is actually taking place within a setting. And as well as assessing that, it also is a useful tool in terms of planning what you need to do next to develop shared education. There are specific self-assessment frameworks, and we're very grateful to our colleagues in ETI for all the work they did on these. There's separate frameworks for preschools, for youth, and for schools, and you'll hear more this afternoon about that youth framework. So that's as much as I'm going to say at this point. We can answer more questions in the marketplace if anybody's interested, but in closing I would like to commend the Youth Council for providing today's opportunity to explore what shared education actually means in practical terms in a youth work setting. Hopefully it will give you an insight into what you can do and that you'll be able to take some practical lessons away from today. Thank you.
I took part in an international project with YMCA Ireland, and they worked alongside YMCA England and YMCA Kosovo.
So my experience of Kosovo and being able to say YMCA was a turning point in my career as a youth worker. Kosovo was, honestly I'd never heard of the country before I was going to it. And learning about its history and what it had been through was very eye-opening to me. I know it wasn't what happened in Northern Ireland, but it was interesting to see the similarities. We in Northern Ireland sometimes believe that, well, in my experience, that Northern Ireland is very unique and that the conflict that happened here hasn't happened anywhere else, but it was good to see that, you know, it has happened in other parts of the world and how other places have dealt with conflict, how they forward, how YMCA Kosovo was moving forward as an organisation focused on young people. I could see how I could relate that to the work that I do in YMCA Lurgan. It created a consciousness within me that my influence mattered, and that I have a duty and a purpose, and that came from my experience of Kosovo, that I could make a difference.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. It's great to be here and to tell you all about the work that we've been doing in ARC. For those of you who haven't heard of ARC, ARC is a joint initiative based in Queen's and Ulster University. Mainly the idea is to try and get social science information in Northern Ireland out there and used by the widest possible audience. So that's why it's great today to talk to maybe an audience of some people who have used our information and perhaps some new people as well. One of the main activities that we do within ARC is run 3 public attitude surveys, which record the attitudes and experiences of people in Northern Ireland to a range of issues. We run 2 of those surveys that I'm going to talk to you about in particular record the attitudes and experiences by Andrew's unit on several years to ask questions about their experiences and attitudes towards shared education. I'm mostly going to talk about results from the 2015 survey, but we did actually ask it in the most recent survey, which is in 2017, and I'll give you a little sneak preview of the 2017 results, but they actually won't be publicly available until May, so in a couple of months' time. So we asked Young Life and Times, YLT, which is 16-year-olds, and Kids Life and Times, KLT, which is 10 and 11-year-olds, basically how favourable they were to the idea of shared education. And you can see there's a general kind of positive attitude to it, but with the 16-year-olds being slightly more favourable than the children in primary 7. And when we asked specifically about the reasons for that, the 16-year-olds were saying, well, it's all about inclusivity, it's about breaking down barriers, and it's helping to reduce prejudice. For the younger children, it was more about interpersonal relationships and about helping to make new friends. And as one of the respondents said, I think it's a good way of getting people from different backgrounds and abilities to mix. In the long run, I think it will prevent or decrease prejudiced views. And then when we asked, why wouldn't you be in favour of shared education? For response to the Young Life and Times, there was some confusion or not sure really of the difference between shared education and integrated education. And maybe that's just because things happen in school or different ways, that the language that perhaps the practitioner uses isn't necessarily the language that the young person thinks about. They do the activity, they're not really thinking about, well, does this come under this policy or that policy? So there was also an idea of, do they lead to sustained friendship, and also perhaps some kind of tension. So one respondent said there would be more fights and it would be too stressful for the teachers to control the students, and another said that shared education is not integration, and I think integrated schools are better at inclusion. What's the point of getting groups of children together if they don't share some classes? And then for the younger children in the Kids Life and Times survey, they're knowing the other children that they've been working with. They didn't want to share the facilities. They were worried about sharing their school hall, or they feel intimidated by the children from that school. For me, I suppose it kind of depends if I know the people or not. So quite different concerns between the two age groups then. So if we look at the 2015 survey results, most of the respondents had taken part in some kind of shared education activity, and it was mostly about projects rather than using or sharing sports facilities or other equipment. For 3/4 of Young Life and Times respondents, and for about half of the Kids Life and Times respondents, these included working with children from different religions. Having said that, 40% of the 10 and 11-year-olds said that they didn't know if the children were from other religions or not. And most of the respondents said, yeah, they did enjoy these activities. But the Kids Life and Times, the 10 and 11-year-olds, were more likely to say that they enjoyed the activities than the others. So we also asked about some of the benefits, and I think this is where my obsession with numbers slightly comes in. So I'll just, rather than look at all these numbers, what we were asking basically were about some of the benefits of shared education, or some of the good things. And the 16-year-olds were slightly more positive than the 10 and 11-year-olds, but they were, all of them, the majority mainly saw that there were a lot of benefits, especially making new friends. That about 9 out of 10 agreed that making new friends was something that they would like out about shared education. Also happy about doing classes that they don't normally do, using facilities they don't normally have. Getting new teachers, different teachers, wasn't really high up on the agenda, and particularly travelling to school. So some of the practicalities, but they weren't too concerned about, but they did see that there were a lot of benefits as well. Now, interestingly, in 2017, we asked a new question, which was about getting together with children from a different financial background, and about 8 out of 10 thought that that was a positive thing about shared education as well. We also asked if they would mind about children from different types of schools coming together, and basically the 16-year-olds were quite happy with all of these. They were quite happy, to have to work or do projects or classes with pupils from an all-girls school, from an all-boys school, from different types of secondary level schools, and also from schools with pupils with special needs or disabilities. What was important actually was the age. So the 16-year-olds weren't too sure about working together with pupils from a primary school, and primary school children weren't too sure that they would be happy working with pupils from a secondary level. So age seems to be the main division there. Also see the pupils, the 16-year-old respondents from the Young Life and Times were a lot more positive than perhaps the Kids Life and Times survey. So again, I think that also reflects the results that we saw earlier, that the younger children were more concerned about will they like the people, will they like the pupils that they're working with, or will they get on with them, or will there be some kind of intimidation? There was general support also for shared campuses. Again, with the 16-year-olds being more positive about the idea of a shared campus than the kids' life and times. But 1 in 4 said that they weren't too sure if they would be happy if they were involved in the shared campus school. The 16-year-olds at the Young Life and Time survey were more positive about the ideas about shared buses, about shared dining halls, just about the whole idea of the shared campus and things coming together. Again, a little bit of reticence from the 10 and 11-year-olds. And this word cloud takes the responses from the 2017 question on what would you like or dislike about a shared education campus. And the word like is the biggest there. So it reflects that the 10 and 11-year-olds were fairly happy with the idea of shared education campus. And the word friends is also important. So what they felt would be good about having a shared education campus is about making new friends. But having said that, there were concerns among the children and young people taking part in the surveys about the size of the campus and how that would actually work, about bullying and the potential for bullying across different groups, and also would it actually highlight differences across groups. So all in all, there is tentative support for shared education, there's tentative support for shared campuses. There are many benefits, but there also are concerns, and those do reflect the age of the children and young people that we were talking about. And the 16-year-olds seem to perceive more benefits to shared education than the 10 and 11-year-olds, but I suppose time does tell. Within the Young Life and Times and Kids Life and Times survey, or Young Life and Times in particular, we do ask other modules looking at CRED, looking at cross-community relations work, and what we're hoping to do with the 2017 survey is to look to see what the relationship is between those different activities. Research by my colleague Dirk Schupatz has initially found that those who have taken part in shared education projects or classes were more favourable about the other community than those who have not taken part. But what we need to do is to look and see the effects of taking part with children with different schools. So whether these pupils were also at integrated schools or the other different factors. So we're hoping to do that analysis in the next few months. And then I just want to do a little bit of publicising. The tables of results, the questionnaires, the data sets, technical reports for both surveys are all available on the website. And the 2017 survey, which includes a large amount of questions on shared education and also on CRED and cross-community relationships as well, will be available by the end of May. But I also look forward to seeing you all and talking to you at the Marketplace Cafe. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michelle Short and I'm a teacher in St Joseph and St James's Primary School, Points Pass.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Skimmons, aka Mrs M, and I'm a teacher in Points Pass Primary School. And we are partner teachers in the Shared Education Programme.
When the people from Playboard came out, they told us about an exciting project. They told us that we would be meeting kids from another school, making new friends, learning more about them, and they would learn more about us. And best of all, we would be doing it all by playing. We learned about friendship and new ways to have fun together. We also worked with each other to explore our identities, religion, culture. I really enjoyed the Playboard project. I'm feeling more confident because I am making new friends from other schools and communities. When I first heard my school was going to take part of a Playboard project, I was very excited. I also felt a bit scared. I didn't know what to expect. We met each week and played. We also learned a lot about ourselves, our families, our friends, and the communities we belong to. Before we started, I was unsure what identity and community was. Now I know that I belong to many communities, like my football club, my school, communities too. I really loved playing with school, and I wish my little sister had been able to do the same as me, but the project finished before she could.
okay, how cute is that? How cute is this? Not. This is what a PhD does to you. So just a word of warning for anybody wanting to undertake that after you do your Viva. It doesn't go away, it's still here, you just kind of think about it all the time. But anyhow, thanks very much to the Youth Council for inviting me to share just some insights today from my practice and my observations as a community youth worker, both previously in the statutory sector, working with some of my colleagues like Siobhan Byrne, who I think is here today, and also then my time in Youth Action as well. The last time that I spoke at a Youth Council event was in Dundalk, and I think it was maybe about 10 years ago, more. So I'm threatening not to do this today, but I spoke about the Eurovision Song Contest and how it connects to community youth work. So I'll leave that one for another day, but we can revisit that more if you kind of thought it was that good the last time around, you know. So anyhow, so I am not an expert of any sort, but I do obviously come with insight and observation and critical reflective practice behind me, and obviously my PhD research goes some way to do to that as well. But I just want to start off by a community youth work student who's currently on placement with Youth Action, was reflecting last week, and she was talking about being in placement in a community youth work setting in Belfast. And she said that a 6-year-old came up to her in the community youth work setting and said, "Are you a Protestant or a Catholic?" So the young 6-year-old girl said that to her, "Are you a Protestant or a Catholic?" And she was going, what's the significance of that, or why are you actually asking me that? And the young girl says, "Well, you must be a Catholic." And the student was going, "Well, what would make me a Catholic? All Protestants aren't nice." Do you know? So now the actual placement student was a Protestant, by the way. So, but again, that really got me to thinking about what Connolly in 2002 talked about, was that by the age of 3, in this culture that we live in, children and young people have already cultural and allegiances to particular identities, and by the age of 6, have been proven to have sectarian comments or sectarian mindsets. So I suppose what I'm kind of coming from is the recognition that we still live in a very, very divided society and very polarised communities. So different writers such as Bell and Roach and Doonan, different people talk about living, that our communities and young people continue to live in bubble syndromes, that they live with this bounded contentment or a cocoonment of some sort in their communities. It's very, very difficult for young people sometimes to have exposure to the other or to have mobility across communities. So for a lot of young people, there's limited contact, limited exposure to the other, and the opportunities for mobility aren't always there. So in comes education and the role of education and youth work as part of that. So my focus today, in terms of the short input that I'm given, is really around shared education in relation to improving outcomes for young people, but with a particular lens on the role of youth work, and also a particular lens in terms of the contribution to peace building outcomes. So I'm referring to my lovely thesis, which I was sick talking about on Tuesday with my examiners. But anyway, here we go. So this is a very, very short synopsis. My thesis set out to look at sectarianism and separation in Northern Ireland, a perspective-based evaluation on the contribution of youth work. Sounds like a lot of words, but basically what it's saying is there are many accusations against the sector to say of the sector. Youth work in. So I carried out consultations with 96 practitioners in our field to find out about what was their perspectives for this work in terms of that we live in a divided society and that youth work has a contribution to make to that. Many youth workers felt that community relations and peace building work should not be forefronted in our work, that it's not the be all and end all, that we do lots of other things. We contribute to mental health and well-being, we contribute to other social issues. So for some, it was definitely not a forefronted thing. So that just gives us food for thought. Some youth workers were clear on understanding the significance and the relevance in current time, and how do we actually make it relevant for young people who on the front of it can appear disconnected and maybe don't understand the impact of the conflict on their lives. The other thing in terms of prioritising needs was that there was like a hierarchy of needs, that why would this have any more significance than mental health and well-being, than LGBT issues, than other issues as well. And again, the analysis from that shows that there's an interconnectedness of issues, that the legacy of the conflict has left in its wake a lot of these social issues which are connected to the conflict, and we need to be aware of that. Second thing in terms of practitioners is the approach. certainly whenever I was doing community relations work back in the South Eastern Education Light Board, there was a range of resources for doing this work. You can do, and this was before the internet as well. There were a lot of hard curriculum-based resources for doing community relations work you could call upon. Workers in my research didn't find that that was the case these days. It was less actually to call upon in terms of currency. But they were also concerned about the pitch and the hook. How do you actually get young people connected into this? How do we actually talk with young people about the conflict? Again, going back to the same student that I talked about, and that's with us at the moment, we talked about the 6-year-old, asking if she was a Catholic or Protestant. She was telling me about a project in Kilkee, where she was exploring with young people and asking them about how does the conflict affect your lives. And the young people were saying very clearly, not at all, not one bit does it affect me. But when she changed the question to how do you think about Protestant Catholics, they were able to talk forever about the impact of it. So that tells us something, I think, is that youth work does do a lot of community relations work and should be proud of its history in this area. But most of the work is taken in terms of single identity settings, so in youth work. And some of the challenges that youth workers were talking about is how do we move from a peacekeeping model into more of a peace-building model. So peacekeeping being diversionary activities like, which are great, about bridging that contact, like sport, not just coming together and being together, but that we also need to be moving into more exploratory of the contention about citizenship and democracy. I think this is really important in terms of Queen's University and ARC. Shabbatz and Robinson in 2006 in their research also recorded that 16-year-olds were more pessimistic about the improvement of community relations in 5 years' time than 18-year-olds. So again, I think that gives us something to be thinking about. That it was, at a Community Relations Council with conference with Youth Action in 2014, again, young people were very keen to build relationships across the different backgrounds. So what is this sharing actually about? However, young people also talked about the challenges in sharing when they said we have not been brought up to share. So all of a sudden you have to share, but we haven't actually been brought up to share. They also said it takes a conscious effort, so it has to be forefront. You need to know why you're doing it. And they also talked about the welfare and safety of themselves could be at risk. And one young person actually said, I hate it. My research, like most research, then develops this lovely little framework or a model or whatever. So my model that I've come up with was developing an agenda for peace through youth work. So like everything, it's an acronym. Agenda is an acronym. So I'm just going to give you very briefly what these actually letters stand for, and this comes from the research itself. So this is an agenda for peace in youth work with a shared education and peace building lens. So A stands for an acknowledgement of need in the first instance, right? That so I'm aware of it, I need to do something about it. So it's not just saying, I know there's an issue, okay, somebody else is getting on with that, it's not my responsibility. So it's acknowledgement of need and appetite to act. G of the model then is getting the buy-in, okay? So again, as I've talked about this hook and the pitch, how do we actually engage the communities to kind of see this is something worthwhile and that it's not a threat to their community or their political identities either. So how do we get the buy-in of the actual issues we're exploring with young people? And like I said there earlier, you might the impact of the conflict. You might be asking them about how did you feel about the Union flag being restricted to whatever amount of days at Belfast City Hall. Young people will have something to say on that. How did you feel about Margaret's death, for example, which so these hot topics, hot periods, when you can actually really get young people hooked in. N of the model is about new relationships, and this is very much where the shared education comes in for me as well. So the new relationships, but not just developing new relationships, but sustaining these relationships and that they're meaningful relationships as well, and friendships. And I think this is the challenge for society. So again, that reflects the shared education. D is dissemination. So this is about impact demonstration. So, okay, we're doing this great youth work, but what about it? What difference is it actually making? So we need to actually document the impact that we're having and also disseminate the learning. One of the things that Ken Harland, etc., in his research found was it was less effective. Community relations was effective now than it was 20 years ago, and that there was not very much sharing of practices. Just, again, re-engage in this conversation more. Finally, is A, which is about building our leadership and allies for action. So who else do we need to be involved to move this forward? So I'm getting on in my projects in Uri and Kilkeel, but I want to be part of a movement of people. So not just our humble piece of work that's going on there, which is fantastic, but we want to be like allied for movement. Who else do we need to have involved? The youth sector cannot do this by itself. Conclusion, Derek Wilson, who I really hold in high regard, talked about our goal in our sector, the youth sector, to promote a vision and practice of a youth service that supports young people to change the nature of a divided society into a shared one. And then just a word of caution to finish. John Paul Lederich, again, says it's all very well having a vision, which is what we want in terms of policy and what we want across our sector, but it's also having the practical know-how, the technique come out of the university or who are volunteers in communities. Do they have the practical know-how how to go about this? Thank you.
I'm sure you have lots